This is really is like, okay, I get the message. Not everybody likes morning like I do. But I'm not really too good after 10 o'clock at night. Like I tell people that, you know? I really am morning.
10 o'clock at night, I'm sound asleep. It's
Yeah.
5 o'clock in the morning when I pop out of bed.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're earlier than I am even.
So she is toast. She is a toaster.
Yeah,
She pops out of
yeah, you're
bed.
a Garfield in the toaster. Good for you.
So good morning to our online community. Welcome to another Wednesday morning, continuing to read through and try to digest the oracles of Isaiah and the pronouncements purported to be from God about how God is controlling the nations and God is punishing the bad ones and rewarding the good ones. That's kind of, I don't know, it's a surprising summary for me, but that's really kind of what I'm beginning to hear more out of Isaiah. I'm Pastor Lou, pastor here at the High Mountain Presbyterian Church. If you're tuning in for the first time online, welcome. We're here every Wednesday morning with a few exceptions, but we have a Zoom community that is joining us that I can see, but you can't see. And then we have Miss Pat, who's here in person today. And we have a couple others who usually are here, but are probably not going to be here today.
I think Debbie's coming.
Oh, she is?
I think
Okay, all right. I didn't know if she was going to fit it in with the beginning of Ramadan or not.
Yeah,
But
well, they kind of I think it's like going to start later today or
Oh, okay.
I got an email
Okay,
from her.
and Barbara will be here to join our online community as well.
Bart is probably working with the Immaculate workers
Oh,
or
yeah,
something this morning.
probably.
At the resale.
That's right,
Oh,
right.
I love her.
So,
Can I ask Colette a question?
of course, go right ahead.
Colette,
I
tell me
think so.
what do you think about all this we're reading in Isaiah?
I think she's walked away from her
Oh, you don't think?
camera a little bit.
Oh.
I don't know.
All right.
Colette, are you there?
She's not sure.
Hi, Debbie.
I'm coming.
Okay.
Good morning, Debbie.
Is that in your way?
I heard you asking me a question.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, I did. What do you think of all of this stuff in Isaiah? It's all like a downer to me, you know? I'm wondering, what are you thinking?
I'm sick of the Old Testament. I would like to do the New Testament.
All right, Colette, I got you. You know what? That answers my question fully. Thank you.
I mean, I hear you, and I just would say don't throw all of the Old Testament away. I just did a little summary of saying, you know, it's like here we are in Isaiah where God is controlling the nations, controlling who rises to power and who's destroyed. And the idea is God is rewarding the good ones and punishing the bad ones. And I never really thought that I would think that as a summary of Isaiah. But, I mean, that's sort of how it comes out. Here comes Barbara.
Oh, hi, Barbara.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Can you, Miss Pat, can you just tap the left side of the screen over there?
Okay, the left side here,
Up top.
up here.
Yeah. Okay, now push that, see the dot button? The dot has many dots. On the left.
Here?
No, on the left. Tap it again where you did.
Okay.
And you'll see there's a pattern of dots. No, it didn't show up yet. Tap it again.
Should I go
One
higher?
more time. There you go. See the dots there?
All of these?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh,
That
hi,
gives us
everybody.
multiple.
Now we really
yeah,
see
we can
you.
see everybody at the same
Oh,
time.
that was cool. You tap the dots and look what
Sorry
we
you
got.
have that pipe sticking in your face there.
Jab my eye out.
I mean, you can move over further this way if you want to. So, everybody's okay?
Yeah.
So, Colette, I'm just going to say, I don't know how you felt about last night, the Bible study last night, but I thought the discussion last night was very good.
I love that.
Yeah, I really
love
did.
the participation.
Yeah, so I just want to remind you that was from the Old Testament, too.
Well, but we didn't talk so much about the Old Testament as what the Bible says in the Psalms.
Yeah. Well, and there clearly is a worldview that is reflected
And we,
in several of the books that is runs smack up against our own sense of what is the biblical worldview. What is it? You know, the God of mercy and grace, or the God of vengeance and justice, seeking revenge. There's an awful lot of people who are writing in some parts of the Bible that feel like that to me. And it seems like the disciples would have been that way if Jesus would have left them to themselves. They were happy to call down fire on anybody that disagreed with them or put obstacles up for them. And I just think it still continues today. It still continues.
I call myself guilty on that for
Yeah.
certain, and I have to be nicer. I have a friend who's praying for me and those people.
Well, that's the ultimate,
I
to me,
love her.
that's the ultimate thing if you disagree with somebody, just to end the conversation by going, you know what, I'll pray for you.
No, that's not.
no,
She agrees with me,
Oh,
but
oh,
she sympathizes. But she said, "You don't want to be like that."
right, makes you too angry. Sometimes anger is comforting.
A release.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a good release.
so, all right, well, we have speaking of getting at some of these oracles, again, I'm going to say, I don't want to borrow from the reading of the Psalms, but I made a discovery that I will probably include more in the reading of the Bible, that in the Psalms, one of the scholars that I'm reading says that in a lot of the Bible, the writers purport to speak for God. They speak for God. So here you have Isaiah, who is producing these oracles, pronouncing God's pronouncements. But in the Psalms, the writers of the Psalms are speaking for humans. And they're clearly speaking for humans. I mean, you think about some of the most famous ones, you know, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. It's a reflection of the human experience, not a pronouncement of what God is purported to be saying. Which is why I think we nuzzle up more to the Psalms, and the Psalms can be full of anger. I mean, the psalmist can be raging, but the psalmist never says, this is God's rage. This is my rage against the Babylonians. And the writer says, smash the Babylonian children's heads against the stones. And I've never really made the distinction that in the Psalms, that's people expressing people's thoughts, and they know it, and they say it. Here, Isaiah, as far as I'm concerned, Isaiah's cloaking that a little bit. And he's pulling down a little of the idea that this is God speaking through me. Whereas really, as if Isaiah is one person, I'm growing more and more in the idea that this is a collection of writings from various points and times in the shifting, and I mean shifting over 300 years, the shifting powers, the rise and fall of governments in this area was dramatic. And alliances are formed. They're formed in order for self-defense, and then the alliance falls apart, and Assyria conquers one section, and then Babylon comes and conquers another section, and then the Persians come. It is a dramatic time of the shifting of governments. And then you have, quote, the words of Isaiah trying to speak a God's eye view to maybe provide reassurance that somehow these massive movements aren't happening all on their own, but somehow they're happening at the whim or the wisp of God. And I understand there would be some comfort in that, but I think I would want to go a little easier on the idea that, you know, when it's good for the children, for Israel, it's because they've done right. And when it's bad for them, it's because they've done wrong. I also, and I have to say, I'm getting tired, can I confess this? I'm getting tired of Isaiah's absolute adamant belief that any alliance, like a NATO alliance, with another nation, unless they are Hebrew, is a sign of lack of faith. He hates alliances. He hates them. And so every time Israel, either in the north or in the south, makes an alliance for protection, you're going to hear from Isaiah, who comes out with an oracle that says, what is wrong with you people? Why, were you going to trust the Egyptians to defend you? Why aren't you trusting God to defend you? You know, why are you going to trust, are you going to appeal to the enemy? This is what happens in the text today. You're going to appeal to the enemy of Assyria? You're going to be friends with the enemy of Assyria? Haven't you learned that the idea of being the enemy of my enemy is my friend is false? The only friend you have in the world is God. So put your faith in God and let come what may, God will reward you in the end for not putting your faith in other governments. And the reason is because governments are so attached to their religions. So Isaiah thinks that if they form alliances with other nations, that they are somehow, what's that phrase, getting into bed with other gods. That they're really trusting other gods to be more powerful. And it's an arrogant view. I think it's a very primitive way.
I think it's it exemplifies people who are on the defensive all the time. That they're looking to remain who they are. They're self-identity. And it's increasingly difficult when you have these empires coming and going. So what's permanent? God.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why, you know, they don't want to bend and make any compromises on their religious views.
Yeah, and I mean, the stories that are told, Esther and the others that we've read, are that eventually the Hebrew faith had to exist in captivity. It had to exist in an environment where it wasn't in control. And the stories, Daniel in the lion's den, all these stories of Nebuchadnezzar and others, they're all about how faith can survive in hostile territory. Now, you pay a price for it, and there are certainly places in the world today where, as if you are of a certain faith and you want to practice that faith, you risk your life. You know, because the government may be intolerant of it. But if you go back to Esther, Esther and Mordecai are people who seem to model how to survive in hostile lands, how to make friends with hostile enemies while you're in captivity. And the whole Babylonian captivity was particularly painful because they tried to exterminate the religion of the Hebrews. But still, it survived. It held on. It reminded me a little bit, I don't know that much about it, but I'm going to go talk about it anyway, that the people of Estonia, during the time of the domination of the USSR, when Christianity was outlawed and it was illegal in the communist world to be a person of faith. And the Estonian people were under the thumb of this oppressive government who said, you know, faith is the enemy of freedom. And what did the Estonian people do? The Estonian people captured the essence of all of their faith, not in going to church, but in song, in music. Their faith survived because of their love of music and the way in which music uniquely carried the essence of the faith from generation to generation. And I read a little of that story, and we have some Estonian people that are a part of our church, and they are musicians, like
crazy.
Yes.
That whole family.
Yes, I know. And so I think,
Wow.
how do you survive in a foreign land? How do you, especially if the foreign land that you're in, is intolerant of your faith? I've never had to experience that. I'm born and raised, at least where on the surface, I'm told that I'm free to practice my faith, but it's not as if there aren't still punishments or losses that you have for being a person of faith. I don't know. I've told this story many times about when I was in kindergarten. I'm trying to think which school it was. I was in kindergarten and first grade, and the school, Delaware Township Public School, for a gym in the wintertime had square dancing. And my parents, evangelical fundamentalists,
I'm Baptist.
were against, no dancing was allowed. And so I had to bring a note in from my parents that I had a religious objection to square dancing. Now the truth is, I didn't have any objection to it. And there I sat myself, they sat me on a chair, and next to me was the Jehovah Witness girl.
Yeah.
So it was just me and the Jehovah Witness girl sitting there exercising our religious freedom. The truth is, I felt like I had been targeted by just the whole momentum of, what was considered fun and normal and ordinary. Nope, I was not allowed to participate.
You know that song? I can't dance. I'm a Baptist.
No,
I
I
can't
don't
dance.
know.
I'm a Baptist. It's really cool. I'm trying to. The guy's name is Mark something. He wrote the song Joseph's Song. You know Joseph's Song?
No, I've never heard any of those songs.
Oh,
What are
you
you
would-
talking about?
These are Gaither. Gaither family.
Yes, I know the Bill Gaither family,
Well,
yes.
this guy Mark, whatever he wrote. The
Oh, he
Joseph.
wrote, oh.
Yeah, you would love that song, Pastor Lou. It's about Joseph's humanity and his struggles and worries about raising Christ. It's
Well,
a good
and it's funny you name Joseph, because Joseph is an example from the early stories of a person who he was sold into slavery,
Right.
and he was traded into Egypt. Egypt was thought of as the godless land. They were terrible, like, I don't know what to call them. They believed that the emperor was God,
Right.
and that he had the power of the sun, and so they were the. Yeah, I know. They had their own God. That's why I kept on
Sure.
talking. Right. They were considered to be terrible because of who they thought God was. And here's Joseph. He rises up to power in a land of religion that diametrically opposed everything that Hebrew faith taught. And he learns how to survive in a way so that power is given to him, and he uses that power to then benefit the people who had come to survive the famine. So there's lots of examples, but for Isaiah, I just feel like Isaiah is dreaming about the Davidic kingdom, and the idea that the Hebrew people, through the line of David, was promised that his line would be forever, and that ultimately he would rule the world, or that the people would rule the world. There's some of that built in there. And then it doesn't ever happen. Again, I've said this enough to get into trouble. I don't think David was worthy of it, first of all. He was a hostile, violent military leader who annihilated everybody that wasn't him. And yes, he built the wealth of Israel. He
had
did.
terrible moral values.
It seems to me.
Me too, but
From our standpoint in this century,
yes, right. That's true too, Debbie.
yes, at
Historically,
that time, we don't know what the average person,
right?
but from the writers, it seemed that if you were powerful,
You could.
that had something to do with your closeness to God.
Yes.
So he wouldn't have been looked at as, an awful person, unless you were on the receiving end.
Right, of him.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good observation, that power was thought to come from God. And so if you rise to power and you are a powerful person in the world and you go out to fight battles and you always win, that's a sign that God is with you. And that carries over to Isaiah.
Yeah.
Isaiah still believes that, that might makes godlike. And he's longing for, I can't help it, he's longing still for the rise of the central power among the people of God so that they could rule the world. And he thinks that they don't because they have violated the law of God. And then when they have some success, or when their enemies run into trouble, he argues that that's God protecting the people, you know.
Just spin it any way you want.
There
You
you
can,
go.
you can.
Let me figure out which one makes me feel the best. Oh, God.
All right, so let's try to read
23.
23rd of Isaiah.
Anybody else want to read?
You're on.
Go for it.
This is God's message to Lebanon. The message about Tyre. You ships of Tarshish cry. The houses and harbor of Tyre are destroyed. This news comes to the ships from the land of Cyprus. Be silent, you who live on the island of Tyre. You merchants of Sidon, be silent. Seamen have made you rich. They traveled the sea to bring grain from Egypt. The men of Tyre brought grain from the Nile Valley and sold it to other nations. Sidon, be ashamed. Strong city of the sea, be ashamed. The sea says, I have not felt the pain of giving birth. I have not reared young men or women. Egypt will hear the news about Tyre, and it will make Egypt hurt with sorrow. You ships should return to Tarshish. You people living near the sea should be sad. Look at your once happy city. Look at your old city. People from that city have traveled far away to live. Who planned Tyre's destruction? Tyre made others rich. Her merchants were treated like princes. Her traders were greatly respected. It was the Lord of Heaven's armies who planned this. He decided to make these proud men unimportant. He decided to disgrace those who were greatly respected. Go through your land, Tarshish, like the Nile goes through Egypt. There is no harbor for you now. The Lord has stretched his hand over the sea. He makes his kingdoms tremble. He commands that Canaan's places of safety be destroyed. The Lord said, Sidon, you will not rejoice any longer. You are destroyed. Even if you cross the sea to Cyprus, you will not find a place to rest. Look at the land of the Babylonians. Babylonia is not a country now. Assyria has made it a place for wild animals. Assyria built towers to attack it. The soldiers took all the treasures from its cities. They turn it into ruins. So be sad, you trading ships, your place of safety is destroyed. At that time, people will forget about Tyre for 70 years. That is the length of a king's life. After 70 years, Tyre will be like the prostitute in this song. O woman, you are forgotten. Take your harp and walk through the city. Play your harp well. Sing your song often. Then people will remember you. After 70 years, the Lord will deal with Tyre. Tyre will again have trade. It will be like a prostitute for all the nations of the earth. The prophets will not be saved for the Lord. Tyre will not keep the money she earns. Or the prophets will be saved for the Lord. Tyre will not keep the money she earns. It will give them to the people who serve the Lord, so they will have plenty of food and nice clothes. All right.
Okay,
Okie doke.
so here we hear it. You hear it very clearly. A footnote in my study Bible says that Tyre was the dominant Phoenician city along the seacoast north of Acco and south of Sidon. It was the major sea power of the day and a very large navy that defended the island city from attack and engaged in trade throughout the Mediterranean. Tyre was allied with Hezekiah. That's the king of the southern kingdom, in the revolt against the Assyrians. But Sennacherib's assault against Phoenicia in 701 quickly forced Tyre and its Phoenician dependents to submit. So the city was conquered. It was destroyed, and its entire ability to function as a trade nation and all of its wealth was dispersed throughout the known world. And Isaiah's opinion is, this is God's doing. Like, I mean, I don't know. I just think it's, It's a worldview that is harder and harder for me to accept. Because the world I live in today, I don't look around the globe and see that the most powerful nations are the ones that God would be happiest with. I just don't believe that's true. You can have power, and you can have control, and you can destroy, and you can be the opposite, the antithesis of what I understand God's way and God's wants for the world are. So then Isaiah would say, well, yeah, but it's not going to last. No nation, a nation that is not built on the foundational principles of how God made the world will not survive. But what if they survive for 400 years? They're not going to die today.
Kind of a long time.
Yeah. Well, and that was the defense that Isaiah used if people accused him of somehow not knowing what's going on. He would always just say, well, just wait. Just wait, you'll see. Yeah. Right.
Right. Not be around to find out.
A nation that builds its foundation. I think, I don't even know what Isaiah was angry about here. It sounds to me like Isaiah is against commerce here.
Yeah. 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 Shipping.
So, what's the problem? What is the? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, you should be happy about that grain, right? From the Nile Valley. Right.
As long as they leave their customs and religion behind, you can deal with us. And I think that holds true today, too, for a lot of people. I mean, I'm okay to do business with you, but don't move in next door to me, because I don't want, you're different, and I don't want to know anything about you.
That's right.
And one of the
I might like
sentences
you,
is that because Tyre trades with many nations, she is disparaged as a prostitute. Like, really? Is that really? Because you do business with other people? I mean, the temple in Jerusalem did business with anybody and everybody, and they were, yes, I mean, so, wow. By the way, Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to Tyre. He was a king of Jerusalem.
Babylon, wasn't it?
But it was 13 years. So laying siege to the city for 13 years, cutting it all off, water, food,
What
everything.
was left?
Yeah,
Nothing.
I know. Well, that's what the point is, nothing. And so, and then Isaiah, quote, predicts, give it 70 years and it'll return. Just give it 70 years. But when it's rebuilt, he predicts that all of the prostituting of itself will benefit God, because all of the wealth that's gained from the trade will then go to the people of God. And her profits will not be stored or hoarded, but her merchandise will supply abundant food and fine clothing for those who live in the presence of the Lord.
Go figure.
And that's what God wants, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen to us. We sound like a bunch of atheists here, struggling.
Yeah.
What God necessarily wants. It's what people want. They want power, they want good stuff, but they don't want other people messing in their lives. Like, don't have the Babylonians come and rule over me, but I'll be glad to take whatever wealth I can get.
Get off, sure.
And I think people are like that today, too, make compromises. We have to live with other people. The world has shrunk. We can talk to people anywhere in the world now, at a moment's notice. So same attitudes as they did back then when you had to get in a ship and go for months to get to somebody else. It's crazy that we still feel that way. And that's not God.
No.
That's not
No.
God's message.
No, it's not.
It's just
I
wrong.
will say that
No.
100 times over. It's
Right.
and actually influenced a lot. It's shocking to me that a lot of the Christian buildup of Jesus as the Son of God and as ushering in the kingdom of God comes from some of the words of Isaiah. So I'm keeping that in the back of my mind, right? But look at what look at what Jesus, as described in the Gospels, does with this Isaiah idea. Jesus says, you have the wrong idea about kingdom. You have the wrong idea about God's rule of the world. And he goes deep in his parables and in his teaching, and ultimately with how his life is ended. Jesus is portrayed as winning, quote, he wins by losing. He wins because he goes before Pilate, who has all the power of nations maybe thought to be blessed by God, and he cannot control Jesus. And Jesus doesn't make any protest. He stands in front of Pilate and says, my kingdom, I wish it wasn't the word kingdom, but my reign, my control is not of this world. And so all of this, this understanding, this how does the world work, Isaiah? How does it work? All of that is called into question by Jesus, who, as we said last night, who gets down on his knees and washes his disciples' feet. He didn't wash the feet of very powerful, important people. He washed the feet of little people who don't mean a thing. and lived in such a way that he seemed to say, my life doesn't mean a thing. Like, only I'm here to do what God has called me to do among the people that no one else would even pay any attention to. How does that square with Isaiah?
Not at all.
It's kind of hard to put the two together. Jesus wasn't bringing power and wealth. He was bringing a message. And the message was, be humble. Be a servant to those around you. That's what God would expect you to do. Treat others as you would have, and you can't have that.
No, you can't.
Because that just flies in the face of power.
Yeah.
And not power given by God. Power that is very human.
And what does power given by God look like? I mean,
It looks like Jesus.
well, yeah. Power given by God looks like a servant. It does not look like a rich and powerful ruler, male or female, king or queen. That is not what power from God looks like. And where do I get that? I get that not just from Jesus, but from the tradition of Jesus that followed from him. And yet, only 200 or 300 years later, they used the words of Jesus to build new kingdoms and to make many new powerful domains, proof that, Jesus was ultimately the right one, because now we have, Egypt has fallen and Christians run Egypt, and we've got in power. We're in power now. But power from God. What is power from God? What does power, look at this. We laughed a little bit. But here Isaiah says that Tyre's merchandise and her wages will be dedicated to the Lord. Her profits will not be stored or hoarded, but their merchandise will supply abundant food and fine clothing for those who live in the presence of the Lord. Here I hear the prosperity gospel preachers, saying, look, that's what's going to happen. When you live according to the way of God, your power in the world comes to you. You will have money, you will have influence, you will rise up in the world as a powerful person because God will give you power. And you'll have fine clothes.
Yeah,
There was a big movement about that a few years back. There was these two little books that were published about a certain prophet, and it was that if how to get wealthy being a Christian. I mean, that's what it was basically.
Oh, yeah,
I wish I could remember the name.
It wasn't
It was
just a couple
huge.
years ago. It's massive. I love the evangelist. His name is Crevlo Dollar. Dollar. Yeah.
I know Pueblo Dollar.
His name is Crevlo Dollar. And with that name,
great name.
he promises to his people that when you are living life the way God wants you to live, money will come to you. And wealth, and I know, that's right. So,
Right? How much does he ask you to send him
Well, you know,
to
and he's-
make this happen?
He's the one that was exposed as having 3 private jets and, the massive mansions in 3 parts of the world. And people, here's what happens. You think that would cause concern or discredit? No. That all goes to crediting him, to say, look, he's a righteous man. How else could a man in the world become so wealthy except he be righteous?
Just what you said, Debbie.
Is there any
Power and wealth is from God.
is there any way to get wealthy besides following God?
If you send all your money to this dude,
Yeah.
and then you realize that you yourself are poor, then the rejoinder always can be, well, there's something you're doing that's
Yeah.
wrong. You must be doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And so there's an out for all of the, I mean, you don't really,
And how do we?
No, it's not worth it.
And we're getting. Come on, Isaiah. I mean, really, come on.
Yeah.
This is a worldview. It's a worldview, and it's world because the world is in view in the nations and the kings and the naming of the different power centers that rise and fall. And the view of Isaiah is it's God who's pulling these strings. It's God. And there is something to learn. So if a cosmopolitan city like Tyre, World Trade Center, collapses, there's something to be learned from God. God is sending a message to the world. And Isaiah seems to decide that the message was, it's bad for you to trade with other nations.
Yeah.
and it's like, to me, that's just the opposite of what God wants us to do. Does not God want us to be with other people,
Yes.
enjoy other people, to get to know other people, because we're all here together. We can all be generous to one another and appreciate one another. But Isaiah is saying, that's exactly what you don't want to do.
It reminds me of Moses' instructions in some ways to the children as they're getting ready to go mingle in the promised land. Now, you're going to be bumping shoulders with other people. Make sure when you go into every city, you kill everybody.
Yep.
Make sure you kill every single person because otherwise you're going to get influenced, you're going to get polluted by ideas that are not from God, and the only way to protect yourself is you have to isolate. Isolate. And make sure you do not mingle. And especially, here it goes, do not intermarry. Do not intermarry, because you start trading, you start selling and buying bananas from a family. First thing you know, they're going to invite you over to dinner, and then your daughter's going to meet their son, and the next thing you know, we won't be able to tell the difference between you and them.
That's why don't let your Catholic daughters date those Protestant
Absolutely,
boys.
do
Look what
not.
happens.
Do not. You're a perfect example.
Right,
This
look
is
what
the problem.
happens. Yep.
But
My grandfather couldn't admit that he was born in Northern Ireland to her because she wouldn't have anything to do with it.
it's
He
like,
was, but he put down on the paperwork on the census England.
Oh,
I think his family was English because they were Protestant.
Right.
But still,
Yeah.
he was born in Northern Ireland and he just couldn't tell her.
no, and Isaiah knows why. Isaiah knows why. This is what happens. And yet,
Not changed.
no.
not a bit.
And so the children of God come out of the desert, having been schooled deeply on the things of God, supposedly, and the lesson is don't mingle. Do not blend your way with others. And it pops up throughout, the reforms of Hezekiah and others along the way. Every problem we've ever had has to do with the fact that we have mingled and we have mixed with people of different faiths. Even if the different faiths are people like the Samaritans, who actually aren't from different faith, but we'll treat them as if they are. And then even during the Civil War, the northern tribes in around Samaria and their hatred of the southern tribes who had Jerusalem, well, they couldn't mix or mingle either.
God still has faith in humankind to do something, I don't know.
Well, he is certainly long-suffering.
God's not giving up on us yet, I don't think.
Did you ever see, my neighbor has I think it's a wonderful bumper sticker. It says coexist.
Yeah,
and it has
I've seen
the-
all the symbols
Oh, yeah,
in the
real-
coexist.
Oh, I think it is like, we should all have them on our cars.
Oh, you are such a liberal now.
Oh, I know, but it's so, I've never put anything like that on my car.
No.
I don't do that. I just felt my husband was weird about having
Stuff on.
fenders nice,
You know, it kind of makes you.
You don't really have fenders anymore, but you'd have to put it on the, like your back, but, yeah, but it's, I actually heard it, Miss Colleen, I said, Colleen, that is wonderful.
One of the experiences of my life, which I always thought was strange, was that here in the United States, years ago now, it's not as much, but the boundaries between denominations of Christianity, Catholic and Protestant only being one, Episcopalians, and then among all the Protestants, all the various, Methodists and Presbyterians, and, we joke a little now because some of that has cooled off. You go into a Presbyterian church and throw a stone, you'll hit 9 Methodists, and,
Right.
you got, but what is amazing to me was that here in the United States, in the domestic land, the boundaries were very clear. But, we used to send missionaries to other parts of the world. And what was interesting was that when the missionaries went to other mission fields, in the mission field, those distinctions did not matter. Catholics worked side by side with Protestants to do hunger relief, to build schools, and all Protestants, they would have their foreign ministry offices, and when they came home from the mission field, they had to be very quiet. Like the Baptists had to be very quiet about how they had worked with the Presbyterians.
But they're all Christians.
All Christians.
And so if they're going into a part of the world where there's not many Christians, you're still doing that. You're still
That's right.
saying,
That's
we're not
right.
gonna
That's
do
right.
it unless first we
Right.
teach you one first.
That's right.
We teach you what you should think about religion. There are very few that go now into other parts of the world and say, we're just gonna help you.
Right. And
No strings attached.
well, the more liberal denominations now have abandoned some of that proselytizing and do work together for the well-being of people regardless of their religion. And maybe if they get to know somebody, they'll share their personal faith and they will pray with people, but not with the idea of converting them. The idea of helping and preaching the gospel through the actions that we do in the world. For Presbyterian, PCUSA, that is the retraining of people we call missionaries. And now they're called, mission workers that go into various places and they work for the well-being of people.
That's the primary goal.
Yeah.
Now. It seems to be changing. The primary goal was to evangelize.
Right.
Now it seems to be to do the work that Jesus told you to do. And I think you can look at how the Native Americans have been treated over the years. Initially, all of these schools and outposts where they were going to help you was really meant to get rid of your indigenous identity.
Right, they were reprogramming.
Exactly.
They were taking the children from the tribes.
Yeah, now it
putting them in
seems more
school.
that in some areas, not all, that they're actually incorporating a lot of indigenous people's ideas.
Yeah, their own stories, right.
Their own stories, and blending it maybe with Christianity, but softening a bit about how you're supposed to treat people who are not exactly like you.
I knew a couple of people who, predominantly Muslim countries were very suspicious of Christians coming into predominantly Muslim countries. And so, but a lot of those countries needed the skills and expertise that Americans could offer. So a lot of American, quote, missionaries would go undercover, and they would apply to go into predominantly Muslim countries as teachers or as engineers or whatever, and then they had to work their work, secretly, trying to elicit people to come to their home, make friends with them, and then begin to talk to them about converting to Christianity, because they didn't see the work they were doing in teaching or engineering. They didn't see any of that as the work of God. That was just, a means to an end.
Yeah.
The idea was, and then, of course, I think even the governments of these Muslim countries were always aware of it, but then when it got to a certain point, then they would be kicked out.
Or killed.
Or killed, especially if somebody converted.
And a lot of very traditional governments that are
Yeah.
horrible, you encourage somebody to lose, to abandon their faith, it's punishment.
Right, it's capital punishment.
Not only the person who leaves the faith, but the person
Right.
which is ridiculous too. But, it's like, and then we import things like to go out war.
I know.
So how do you expect other people to, and there are still people today that say, we did so much for the Iraqi people.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
no, Iraq. It's so far from the truth. Was Saddam Hussein horrible? Absolutely. But it wasn't our responsibility then, it was on our lie. We went there on our lie, and I don't understand still what the idea was. What was
I don't think anybody knows in the end. I don't think they know why.
It was clear, and they knew there were no weapons of mass destruction. The UN had sent envoys in there, and they knew there were none.
Well, and people didn't believe it, or didn't want to believe it, or they were happy to hear the news that there might be. And so, I mean,
Don't forget, we were really a hawk government at that time, extremely.
Still are.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that was,
and we were worried about oil reserves.
oh dear
Well,
God
that
help
was,
us.
that was not about soil, that's right.
Once again, what is in our interest?
Yes.
There you
Not
go.
what is best for the people of that country, but what is in our interest? What do we need from them?
Well, and again, brings us right back to Isaiah and his global analysis of nations and what makes nations valuable in themselves, what makes them bad nations. It seems to me the bottom line for Isaiah is a nation is a bad nation if it's not good for us, or whatever they have, which we need. And if they'll give it to us, they're a good nation. But if they don't, we have to go take it from them. Yes, I know.
Yes.
It's
This never changed.
no, it's a global rule. I mean, I know there are movements within both our government and within educational institutions to try to get at this way of thinking, to understand that this does not benefit those we declare as our enemies or even us in our engagement in it. But you see this rise of threat between Russia and China and a perceived threat to the United States, and you just see the winds of war are starting to blow again and rising up, and you go, what can we do? Are we just going to be victims again as people perceive aggression on the other side or aggression on our side? Who's the aggressors? And Isaiah seems to think, just relax. You know what? Don't worry about it, because the winners will be winners because God was on their side, even if they're your enemies.
Just have to wait 70 years.
Yeah, wait 70 years, and you'll see. Okay. Let's read 24. See if there's anything more optimistic in 24. Now,
There are optimistic parts of
there are, and there's good news to
Yeah,
come.
12, like I said, I like chapter 12.
Yeah,
That was
right.
it. Okay.
So, according to my footnotes, the heading on this is Prophetic Announcement of the Lord's New World Order. based in Zion. And Zion is a catchword for Jerusalem and the people of the Hebrew faith being in charge. Okay, so let's see what.
Okay, my little chapter says, God will punish the world.
There you go.
There you go. Look, the Lord will destroy the earth and leave it empty. He will ruin the surface of the land and scatter its peoples. At that time, the same thing will happen to everyone, to common people and priests, to slaves and masters, to women slaves and their woman masters, to buyers and sellers, to those who borrow and those who lend, and to bankers and those who owe the bank. The earth will be completely empty. The wealth will all be taken. This will happen because the Lord commanded it. The earth will dry up and die. The world will grow weak and die. The great leaders in this land will become weak. The people of the earth have ruined it. They do not follow God's teachings. They do not obey God's laws. They break their agreement with God that was to last forever. A curse will destroy the earth. The people of the world are guilty, so they will be burned up. Only a few will be left. The new vine will be bad, and the grapevines will die. People who were happy will be sad. The happy music of the tambourines will end. The happy sounds of wild parties will stop. Oh, shucks. The joyful music from the harps will end. People will no longer sing while they drink their wine. The beer will taste bitter to those who drink it. The ruined city will be empty. People will hide behind closed doors. People in the streets will ask for wine, but joy will have turned to sadness. All the happiness will have left. The city will be left in ruins. Its gates will be smashed to pieces. This is what will happen all over the earth. This will happen to all the nations. The earth will be like an olive tree after the harvest. It will be like the few grapes left on a vine after harvest. The people shout for joy. From the west they praise the greatness of the Lord. People in the east praise the Lord. People in the islands of the sea praise the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. We hear songs from every part of the earth. These songs praise God, the righteous one. But I said, I am dying. I am dying. How terrible it will be for me. Traitors turn against people with their dishonesty. They turn against people. There are terrors, holes and traps for the people of the earth. Anyone who tries to escape from the sound of terror will fall into a hole. Anyone who climbs out of the hole will be caught in a trap. The clouds in the sky will pour out rain. The foundations of the earth will shake. The earth will be broken up, and the earth will split open. The earth will shake violently. The earth will stumble around like a man who is drunk. It will shake like a hut in a storm. Its sin is like a heavy weight on its back. The earth will fall and never rise again. At that time the Lord will punish the powers in the sky above and the rulers on earth below. They will be gathered together. They will be thrown into a pit as prisoners. They will be shut up in prison, and after much time they will be punished. The moon will be embarrassed. The sun will be ashamed. This will happen because the Lord of heaven's armies will rule as king on Mount Zion in Jerusalem. Jerusalem leaders will see his greatness. Oh, yeah. Just what you said.
Well, I mean, here it's, I don't know that I've ever read Isaiah 24. I don't know that I've ever actually read this and heard this. I mean, there's nothing left. I don't know who these people are at the end when the Lord of hosts will reign on Mount Zion in Jerusalem, and before his elders he will manifest his glory. It seems to me that earth is gone, and all that's left is the domain of God and the minions of God, not people. People are done. What graphic description.
Something about how we misused the earth.
Yes. Yeah.
That kind of is coming.
Well, that's
Right.
what you hear.
The earth is polluted
Yep.
under its inhabitants. Well, welcome to the year 2022. The earth is
Or
polluted.
2023.
Yeah,
Thank you,
2023. Thank you.
Oh, it keeps on moving along.
Oh, that happened already, didn't it?
That's because they have transgressed the law. I
That's
think
right.
Isaiah is thinking of God's law.
They violated the statutes of God, and they've broken the everlasting covenant.
We
Like,
are, because God did say take care of it.
yes,
Right.
yeah, the everlasting covenant
That's
was
right.
that we were to care for the earth and to be the inhabitants. Its inhabitants will suffer for their guilt. And it even goes on to say, and not just the Hebrew people, the world's population, the earth's population.
What it says. The earth will be like an olive tree after the harvest, the earth.
And when that image came to my mind, where is that? What verse is that about the olive tree? That is
It's in 13.
13. So when the olive tree is beaten, it'll be like a beaten olive tree. And all I could think about is, have you seen how they harvest olives now? They have a machine that grabs a hold of the trunk and shakes it, and there's nothing left. Nothing. Just shake. And they pick pecans the same way,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
They just shake the tree, and I think this is Isaiah's idea about where the population of the global world is in relationship to God. It needs to be shaken and shaken till everything that is a part of it falls off to the ground. Wow, he is not having a good day. He is not having a good day. Wow.
There's a lot of really dark poetry.
Oh,
isn't
the
it?
imagery here is
It's like,
incredible. All the leaders of the world are going to be gathered up, and they're going to be thrown in a pit,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're going to be in the pit with a lid on it for a while, and then at some later time, someone will come back around to then punish them.
After much time
yeah,
has passed.
yeah, they be in the pit for a while, and then your punishment will come.
Go to your room and think about
that's-
what you just did.
That's right. I mean, wow.
Oh, gosh.
Some of this earth is violently shaken. There are surahs in the Quran that speak about this too. And I think it's like the coming of Judgment Day.
Yes.
Here it brings to mind that this happens with people all over the world. There are earthquakes all over the world that just,
Devastate.
flatten cities. So, I
And
mean,
the-
that's,
Yeah.
I don't know, that's something that people of all times can relate to, that image, because it happens all the time.
Yeah. And, okay, a couple of journeys in my brain went off. When I was growing up, Maxwell Smart was a television show, right? And you remember the enemy of Maxwell Smart?
Chaos?
Chaos. It was chaos.
I do remember.
And that is a very apt name, and it's a very biblical name because in the beginning, there was only chaos. And everything that God brought to the world was bringing order out of chaos. And so what a great, deep thing. But here, it says that it is chaos that is going to return. And I was listening to the news this morning, and these massive demonstrations that are taking place in Israel against the new, more autocratic government. You know what they're calling the demonstrations? Chaos. The demonstrators are calling themselves chaos. We are bringing chaos into this situation, and that you will not, because there are people, there are both conservative Jews and liberal Jews, and there are Muslim people, and it is such a conglomeration of people, and what they're basically saying is, we are going to bring chaos in the streets until you figure out that you may not proceed in the direction of this totalitarian government. And
Shout louder.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
They're going to bring chaos. And so I just find it really interesting that chaos is waiting, lurking, just around the corner, under the ground. And chaos, I don't know, you'd think this was written by an environmentalist, right?
Yeah.
This should be the chapter of the environmentalists. This is the prediction. And nowadays they're talking a lot about how environmentalists they're sounding more and more like Isaiah, like this doom and gloom. They're losing hope for the idea that we may be able to stem the tide of what we've set in motion. And there are obviously scientists who are opposed to that, but when they get together for these conferences on the environment, the news is so bad that,
Over and over.
that it's just depressing.
Weather, I mean, come on. If that is not a sign, right?
Yeah.
That
What
something's
is,
wrong.
you have to be hit over the head, I mean,
Yeah.
what is wrong?
You know, our green committee, like we're very small down Hawthorne, but our green committee there, we have not been able to drink our water from the tap for 2 years now because of plastic pollution. And it is, I'm here to tell you, it's a nuisance. I mean, now we're used to it, but it is a nuisance. You have to buy water that you're gonna drink. You can't even boil it. It's not like you can boil it and get it
No,
out.
'cause it won't get
doesn't
away.
work. You can't even use like just normal filters. You have to have a specific type of filter put into your home. It's all rather expensive for a lot of people. So we were talking about that. In that little little town, you can see this has happened. I mean, globally, it's huge, but we even see it in our little town of 20-some thousand people.
A lot of the towns across New Jersey are hit with the
Well,
same
yeah, so bad. Tom's River is a hot mess, so,
thing. You don't have water, you gotta buy water.
yeah.
This is good for a lot of people.
Now, I have to buy water all the time because I have arsenic in my water.
Oh,
That may be naturally.
Yeah, arsenic occurs naturally in some wells, but
Yeah, in my well.
If you sell water, now, there was a time when water was free,
yeah, I know.
but now, you know,
Yeah.
there's big companies like Pepsi, Nestle, they
yeah,
sell water, not only here, they're all across the
all
world,
over.
and then they sell it back to you. They take it from you, and they sell it back to you.
Big
And it's
business.
like, so are things gonna change if people in power own stock in Nestle?
My uncle, 20 years ago, lived in Arizona, and the water wars of Arizona and Colorado were taking on. And he said, and it's been said by many people, water is the new oil. It is the new oil. Water is going to be the deciding factor for the rise and fall of governments, of people.
I have to leave. I'll listen to it on later.
Okay.
Okay, goodbye, Colette.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Bye.
Take care.
Good day,
Take
Bye.
care.
Colette.
Bye.
You're looking good, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Who's in that bottom screen?
Does it have a name?
Yeah.
Minnie Hunt? Oh, Melinda Hunt?
Oh, Melinda.
Melinda.
Is that you, Melinda?
Yeah.
Hi, it's me.
I didn't know you were there. You sneak in on us.
I'm just observing.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, well, welcome.
Thank you.
So, I don't know. I mean, wow. I didn't expect to get depressed by the Bible today.
Yeah, we were in such a good mood earlier.
Here it is. We hear from the ends of the earth, we hear songs of praise. Notice that while this is all going on, the faithful community is singing songs of praise to God.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the east, they sing songs of praise to God. In the west, they sing songs of praise to God. The coastlands of the sea, they're glorifying the name of God. Meanwhile, the foundations of their very existence are being eroded away by God.
That must mean the way we are. Like, we just keep on doing what we keep
Well,
on doing.
isn't that the truth? I mean, let's
Yeah.
just keep going, you know?
This is not the reality. The afterlife is the reality.
Right.
Yeah.
That is, I think some of what Isaiah is saying there kind of points to that too, so.
So you think that this image of the Lord of hosts will reign on Mount Zion in Jerusalem is when it's all done? When it's all collapsed? When the apocalypse has come?
Not on earth? Is that what you're saying, Deb? Not on earth?
It sounds like it might be, but there's nothing left of the earth.
Yeah.
If the
Yeah.
end comes to the earth, then there's still the reality of God,
Right.
Yeah.
what's to come.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
the eschatology of all the three religions isn't there gonna be an end of time and, you know?
The
it will
last
come to an
verse.
end?
Yeah.
They always say it's going to be in Jerusalem,
That's right.
so maybe Isaiah is prescient in that.
And I think again, it's hard to speak one sentence that's true of anything of Christians,
Right.
but I think that in my sense, in the world of Christians that I hang out with, the scholars, the biblical scholars, and the churches, the idea of the end of time and God finally fixing the world through a great, convulsion of the world is diminishing in theology. It is falling away. And what's taking its place is a call to a new world today. A new world today. A world that is made up of us turning to see that God has still given us this command from the garden to be the caretakers of the earth. Not to abandon the earth and to start to envision that God has given up on the earth. The theology I grew up with my father in particular, believed that what was important was not this world. It's the next world that is important, and what you really needed to do was to survive in this world as if it's hostile to everything, and keep your mind set on the world that is coming, to be in the watchtower, as the Jehovah's Witnesses would say. Watch for the coming of God, because this world is given over. It's already given over to the powers of, destruction and of evil. And you should know that. And so keep yourself apart from it. That was our message.
Right.
Just keep yourself apart. Be in the world, but do not be of the world, because the world is going to be destroyed.
That's a very Islamic, that's absolutely Islamic. But there's also in Islam the hope that you can do change in this world while you're here. There's hope in that, and it's the way you treat each other.
Does it go hand in hand with the apocalyptic view? I mean, do the same people hold out for the same thing?
Because we don't know what's coming, we do not know what God knows, we have to continue in the face of things that we find offensive. We still have to strive to do what God wants us to do, to be that blessing. It's not up to us to say, we abandon all hope because
Right.
we know it's coming to an end. We're still here and we have a mission while we're here. And even if it looks terrible, that the weather is changing and we still have a mission. We can still do things to change it. That's the hope of faith.
There's we'll see how far off track I can get with this comment. Because a lot of the end of world theologies, apocalyptic, are based in visions of John in the book of the Revelation of Jesus Christ at the end of the Bible. And I struggle still to find a platform to be able to, my image is to throw a rope around that and pull it back to the center. And this is what if you ask, so here Isaiah is saying, God is going to do something really big. It's going to turn the world upside down. It's going to reorganize all. And John, in the book of Revelation, answers the question. Because John believed that the greatest, most unthinkable, in a way, world-destroying and new world-creating event that God could ever do was the incarnation of God in Jesus. And Jesus' arrival in the world and the crucifixion of Jesus and the resurrection. So John, although he becomes the source of a lot of people's ideas about the end of the world, just think about this. The end of the world happened with the crucifixion.
That's right. It is finished.
The end of the world happened. It's very Christian.
Yes.
And I don't apologize for it. It is, but here's what I wish, Debbie. I wish Christianity held on to it more. Because I think that a lot of Christians today have looked past the cataclysmic events of the ground zero and the birth of Jesus and his life and his death and the resurrection, they look past it and they look for something more important or bigger to come in the future. Whereas the Bible writers, the New Testament writers said, bigger than what? Bigger than this? And in John's vision, in Revelation, he is not, I swear, he is not imagining a future to come. He's telling the story. You know what the book of Revelation's title is? The Revelation of Jesus Christ. And so, and here's how it's reflected. It's in the world. It's right among us. How do we count our years in the Christian world? We count our years from the birth, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And everything in life has reference to that. Everything that happened before that has reference to that. And that was originally Christian theology. The apocalypse has come, but we missed it. We missed it. We looked for it in things like the earth turning over or something shaking the tree. Jesus shook the olive tree. Jesus turned the world upside down. He you know.
The message is in the important thing, and that's why I'm saying, even though I don't have quite the same view, I think that it's important to listen to Jesus and to Muhammad, because they're bringing that message.
They are.
That the world is changed because we have the way to coexist in peace and make a better world. Woe to you if you don't heed that.
Right.
You're not going to live a very pleasant life. But you have the choice. You're here. You may as well do it. We don't know what's going to happen. This world will end. We've seen with our telescopes, worlds end.
Yes, we.
So it's what we don't need to concern ourselves with what God knows, maybe 1 million or 2 billion years in the future. We need to concern ourselves with what we're doing right here, right now.
That's why.
And I think that's what Jesus is.
I think it is. Jesus said, the kingdom, the reign of God is at hand. It is at hand. And my New Testament professor said, the Greek word for at hand, he said, imagine this, you're tied to a railroad track. And you hear the sound of a locomotive coming down the track. And the engine is actually about 10 feet from you. And so the Greek word at hand
Yeah.
is, I mean,
is at hand.
what's the difference between the 10 feet the locomotive hasn't moved yet and its arrival? So when Jesus is saying to his disciples, the kingdom of God, the reign of God in this world is at hand. It is among us. It's imminent. And so Jesus' response is to say, don't wait for the sky to part and for the earth to vomit its hot lava up. It's here. Now is the time.
The time is at hand.
Now is the time. And
God, show me the sign.
yes,
Yeah.
it's here. The sign is here. And so Isaiah, I guess, is, he's making his world and our world aware of how vulnerable the structures of the world are. The world was actually chaos before we arrived, and it can return to chaos in a nanosecond.
Quran told it will eventually someday to return to chaos. You don't know. That's the thing. You don't know when that's going to be.
Right.
So don't sit on the behind and
That's right.
do what's right. Love your neighbors as yourself. Number one, love everyone. Do we do that?
No,
We don't do it, and we
that,
forget that
Debbie.
that's the
We
commandment.
don't know.
It's the commandment of the new age. Jesus said, I give you a new commandment. Whatever you imagine the law of God was, the commandment in essence and in content is to love each other. And that everything else that Isaiah screams about comes from not loving each other, not caring about people. I go back to,
Care
yeah.
about money. These are the things that, even though we say, I don't care about those things,
Yeah.
we do care about them.
Yeah, we do.
And I don't know how you can not completely not of this world. I really don't
agree.
know, you know.
And the sadness I get sometimes, or what's carried around in the public popular idea, like take the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, Sodom and Gomorrah was completely destroyed. Fire fell from heaven and it was leveled. No sign of it having existed on the earth. Why? Well, we love to tell the story. It was because of homosexuality. Every page of the story of Sodom and Gomorrah says it was because they were cheating people in the public square. They were selling a pound of potatoes and they were putting their finger on the scale to make it a pound when it wasn't a pound. It's the ultimate act of unlove. It was a city, Sodom and Gomorrah were two cities that were given over entirely to corruption, especially abuse of the sojourners and travelers who made their way through the cities. In hospitality. The terrible act of a God who is the author of hospitality and of love. Abraham and Sarah, the archetypes of our way of faith. What's their first and important call? They saw a stranger on the horizon. They opened their tent. They killed the fatted calf for the strangers to come. This is the way of God. Sodom and Gomorrah, they had said, like we all will say, oh, you know, I see an opportunity here for me to charge more than I should charge. And to get wealth. And to accumulate a lot of wealth.
Make people pay for their water.
Yeah, make
there
people
you go.
pay for their water. I have, when we were kids, the fights in the back of the Ford wagon with the 7 of us always came down to, Mom, he's touching me,
Oh, yes.
right? They're touching me, and you
He's
go,
breathing in my face.
right, and then you put your finger an inch from their face and go, air is free, air is free. And I think of that crazy brain that I have. I think of that every time I pull up in a gas station and have to put quarters in to buy air.
Oh, yeah. That is
And I go,
terrible.
no, it's not. Air is not free. I mean,
No.
it's compressed air, but air is not free anymore.
No.
And it used to be. You used to be able to drive up and grab the hose and just pump your tire up. Nope, air is not free.
I who pumped the gas would say,
You want
Yeah,
air?
well, yeah, would you like me to check your tire? Right. Come on over here and I'll pump your tire. Oh my goodness, I've become old cranky person now.
Certain Mavis, I want to just tell you this, certain Mavis tires have a free pump outside.
Is that
I
right?
use the one on Goffel Road
Yeah.
in Ridgewood, that is there.
So you mean some places air still is
Yes,
free?
But that Mavis, I can tell you that. I know that for a fact.
And I have to tell you, in the, is it Kingwood? Frenchtown. In Frenchtown, New Jersey, which is way up the Delaware River, there is a natural artesian well. And it flows out of the mountain. And over the years, people have built this stone area. And there's a hose that comes out. And if you ever drive through the northern part of Frenchtown, you'll notice there's a line of cars. And you know what they're doing? They're getting free water. They're,
"Is there one of those up on the mountain here on the border of Wayne and Franklin Lakes?"
A cistern, yep,
Yeah, but I think they closed it.
Yeah.
I think they found out it was
Yeah.
polluted.
well, in this one, they do test. There's a sign on the side that says, you know, the government tests the water. So it has lingered as tested, but you don't have to pay for it. And I think it's a little window, and it's like, but people come, and they do have a sign that says, please don't fill more than 2 or 3 jugs because a lot of people are waiting, so you put the jug under there and it's crystal clear, fresh water that comes up from the ground.
That's what we have in Hawthorne, artesian wells.
That's right.
People used to come, well, Ridgewood bought water from us and Fair Lawn.
We had well
Yeah.
water in Brooklyn.
Okay, and we, my aunt who lived in Jersey City, she would always come with jugs to,
Yeah.
like old milk
And
jugs.
so here is supposed to be the example that God gives freely. God gives air
Yeah,
and water and sun. Yeah. So it's supposed to be the basic understanding of how life works, that at the core of life there is generosity and hospitality from God who gives us. Jesus says, look, this is the way it works. You take 1 grain of wheat, you put it in the ground, and God turns it into 100 grains.
Yep.
Like, that's the principle of life. So go with that. Live with that. That's right. Because, why not? You have to share it. Or at least, whatever you leave on the ground, whatever drops on the ground when you're gleaning, leave it so the poor people can come along and pick it up and eat it. And now we have these massive machines that will collect 100% of the grain. There's nothing left of the grain. And they plant it on 100% of the arable soil. And so if the earth opens up tomorrow and everything falls into the magma, we all know why.
Yeah, there you go.
We deserve it.
Sexual immorality.
But
that.
it always is.
Oh, that. Why isn't that named here anywhere?
No, you don't see it. Pastor Lou, while you were talking about John and Jesus, the Revelation, I was thinking about a movie I saw, and I wish I knew which movie it was. Of course, it was a story about Christ. And at the end of it, it started out with very little letters that said the end, but as it came closer to the screen, it said, it's just the beginning.
Yeah. Yes.
And I love,
Well,
I don't know which one it was,
Yeah.
but I was very moved by it. I thought, oh, this is a lovely thought.
Well, and maybe that's what Isaiah is trying to say with his ending here. Like, it isn't over. God isn't done. But it seems to me it's only going to be the earth. Yeah, it seems like it's only going to be a fun place for the angels. Because I don't, the Lord of hosts will reign on Zion.
Him and his armies
And
over
then,
there.
and God's elders will manifest his glory. So I guess I'm Presbyterian, so that means God's going to gather up all the elders from the Presbyterian church and put them in charge in the world.
There you go. Or at least all the Reformed Protestant
That's right, just the
churches.
Reformed Protestant
Make sure,
churches,
you could
right.
be a little broader.
God's going to go gather up all the elders, and they're going to rule the world. But there's nothing left of it. There's nothing left. The soil's gone, the water's gone, the air's gone. You can have it.
Yep.
All right. Well, my friends,
Okay,
that's it for today.
all right.
It was good to be together. Melinda, it was wonderful to have you with us on Wednesday morning, and glad you were here. And I'll see you all, I guess, next Tuesday night or next
Okay,
Wednesday.
Very good.
Not you, right?
All
But-
right.
Wednesday.
Okay, very good.
What was I thinking? Oh, tomorrow we're gonna have mission 12.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah, noon.
Noon, okay,
Noon.
good.
Yep.
All right.
Take care, all. Have a
All
good
right.
day.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye now.
good day, everyone.
Yesterday, last evening, a lot of the ladies that I know went and decorated the Clifton Mosque inside.
Yeah,
And I don't think they finished.
okay.
So a few of us were gonna go over
Very
and finish
nice.
it now.
Could I ask how you decorate? Like,
Oh, just lights